Let's take a look at the Art of Nintendo Power exhibit, which is full of one-of-a-kind original artwork created for the magazine. I'm here with the owner, Stefan, who was nice enough to walk us through the exhibit. Stefan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Stefan Reece. I'm the Executive Director of the Interactive Art Collection, a 501c3 nonprofit video game art museum.
So Stefan, how did your love of video game nostalgia and want for preservation manifest itself?
So I started collecting games, right, just like retail stuff. And I pretty quickly realized that I enjoyed the hunt more than anything, and realized that for the most part, collecting retail video games is not difficult, it's just expensive, for the most part. And so I started looking for the next harder thing, right? Always looking for the next harder thing. And so I was like, oh, I'm gonna start collecting point of sale displays, like fiber optic signs and all that kind of stuff. And so then I kind of got what I wanted then, and I was like, okay, well, what's next? And I started collecting internal, Nintendo employee items and trophies and, things from their desks and paperwork and stuff like that. And then I was like, okay, well, that's cool, but like, what's the harder thing? And so during a talk with a Nintendo gameplay counselor, he said, well, hey, I don't have anything for my counselor days, but after I was a counselor, I drew for Nintendo Power Magazine, and I have some of that. Would you be interested? And like, my mind blew up, because it was, everything I find here is one of one. Every single piece, it's the only one in the world. And so like, that's like the promised land for me as far as like that need to do the hard thing. From there, it was like, okay, well, if this is my final form, then like what am I doing this for? What is the point if it's just gonna like sit in my house? And so that's when I decided to become basically a mobile museum. So since I've been doing the art thing for about 10 years, and then since 2019 I've been touring it, and then since 2021 we've been a 501c3 nonprofit.
It's quite incredible in person. Would you mind walking us through a couple of your favorite pieces in the collection? Doesn't have to be the most rare, expensive item, but maybe something you consider to be the most unique and special pieces in the exhibit.
I really love the Castlevania 4 oil painting. He's using as a reference the cover for issue number 2 here. That is this costume. And so, which is not the correct reference. So essentially he drew that first reference and submitted it, and they're like, well, he doesn't look anything like that in Castlevania 4. So he had to redraw it. So there you're seeing the corrected version with him wearing the correct costume, and then the final. To my knowledge, this is the only oil painting ever painted for the magazine. Oil is the artist's preferred medium, so it was very fast for him. And since the deliverable to Nintendo was not the painting, it was a photo of the painting, right? So like, this was never in the walls of Nintendo, right? Yeah. So this was actually wet when that photo was taken. So, because he didn't have to wait, right? Because he was just gonna take a photo and that's it. So yeah, I love this piece. Probably the Wily ship is one of my favorite pieces.
Is this what, Mega Man 2?
Mega Man 2, yeah. And the thing about the Wily ship is that there's really no reason why it should exist. Because like, at the time, Nintendo wasn't Nintendo, right? It's so big that like the smaller pieces, like the Dr. Mario paint, like that makes sense to me that could exist because they just like put it in a drawer or whatever. But like, this thing is massive, and for them to have saved it for now 35 years, we've had it for about 5 years, so 30 years. So like, those are some of my favorite pieces, the ones where I look at them, I'm like, there is no reason why this should exist. And yet we have it in the archive, which is amazing. So unlike the professional art, where Nintendo would have had to pay a stipend to keep it, otherwise the contractual art should have gotten returned to the artist in most cases, and that's usually how we're able to find it, is we end up tracking down the artist or the estate, their families, and kind of seeing what they still have. But in this case, Nintendo never returned any of the reader-submitted envelope art because it would have been many people's full-time jobs, because they were getting thousands of submissions every week, right? So as far as like within, like, all of this is like hell level rare to find, right? But like within that, this is probably the hardest stuff to find because Nintendo never returned it. So the only reason why we have these is that there was a member of the call center that in 2010 they bulldozed the Redmond Museum, or the Redmond office, and they built a new building. And so he tells it very heroically, but like as the wrecking balls were coming in, right, he runs in and takes a bunch of art off the walls in the call center, because when these would get submitted, they'd tack them up on the walls as just kind of like office art. And so he was able to take a bunch of envelope art and get out of the building before they knocked it down. Yeah. So presumably there were thousands of pieces that were lost when they bulldozed that building. But we're fortunate to have, I have about 100 pieces like this. It's just really expensive to frame because there's, the multi-opening frames are really expensive. So, but yeah, and I love that it's the full set, right? This is every envelope from this issue.
It's unbelievable that these not only still exist, but you're able to display a full set. And I think this is a perfect example of quite literally a preserved page in time.
Well, and like this is more what I'm trying to do, and this is the whole reason why I do it myself, because I can present these collections as in context, like as a exhibit, rather than if I gave this stuff to a brick and mortar museum, they would put it in storage, pull out a couple pieces every once in a while, and you would never see it like this, yeah. Right? But it's not just about like, hey, look at this cool rare art, isn't it cool? But it's like I love to be able to show process and how I love to be able to show every facet of how the magazine was made, and the reader submitted envelope art was such a big part of the magazine's soul that's why I bring it out, because I love to be able to kind of give you like the breadth of, like, this is an experience, not just an art exhibit.